After years of sharing my garden with my elderly neighbor, I planted rare roses from my late mother. Days later, I found them uprooted. She stood over the ruins and whispered, "She's gone, and so should these be." I dropped to my knees in silence. When I checked my security cameras, what I saw was: I live in Albany, Oregon. Quiet neighborhood. Ranch-style homes. Big yards. The kind of place where people wave but keep to themselves. That used to be enough for me. 12 years ago, a woman named Mrs. Delaney moved in next door. Her husband had just died. She was 67 then. Short. White hair pulled tight. Always wore cardigans no matter the weather. The first time I saw her, she was dragging a metal chair across her porch like she wanted everyone to hear it. I had just turned 34. Divorced. Still raw from it. My mom had passed 6 months before that, and I hadn't really talked to anyone since. My therapy was the backyard. I grew things. Mostly vegetables at first. Then herbs. But my mother loved roses. So I started those too. The first time Mrs. Delaney spoke to me, I was on my knees planting a row of tulips. She leaned over the fence and said, "You're crowding them. They'll rot." No introduction. No smile. I didn't argue. I just nodded. After that, she kept showing up. She'd walk right into my yard without knocking. She'd point out things I was doing wrong. Sometimes she'd help, trimming a bush or moving pots. Sometimes she'd just sit on my patio chair like she owned it and talk about her past. At first, it was fine. I thought maybe she was just lonely. She had no kids, no one ever visited. Over time, I let her plant a few things along the side yard. She liked lilies. I let her use a section near the fence. I figured if it made her happy, what was the harm? She started calling the garden ours. That rubbed me the wrong way, but I let it go. Then came the opinions about roses. She hated them. She'd say they were vain, or too proud, whatever that meant. She claimed wildflowers were more honest. One day she told me flat out, "Your mother had bad taste." That stopped me cold. I told her not to talk about my mom like that. She shrugged. Said, "I just say what I think." I started keeping my distance. But she still came over. Still acted like the garden was community property. A few months ago, I made a choice. I was finally ready to do something in my mom's memory. On the day she passed, I ordered clippings of Rosa sterling silver. Pale lavender roses. Rare. She loved them more than anything. I paid a lot. Tracked them down from a specialty grower in California. When they arrived, I cleared a patch near the old oak, where the sun hits just right in the morning. I planted them in a crescent, just like she used to. For the first time in years, I felt peace. Every morning, I checked on them. I whispered to them. I talked to my mom. I told her about my day. It became part of my routine. Then one afternoon, I came home from work and froze. They were gone. Not dead. Not wilted. Gone. The soil was torn up, roots sticking out like someone had ripped them out with their bare hands. Petals were scattered across the yard like trash. The stems were snapped. Crushed. I dropped to my knees. I couldn't breathe. And there she was. Mrs. Delaney stood on the edge of the wreckage. Not moving. Her arms were folded. Her face calm. Cold. Then she said it. Her voice low and flat. She's gone. And so should these be. That was it. No explanation. No apology. Just that. I couldn't even respond. I just sat there, hands in the dirt, staring at the hole where my mother's roses had been. That night I didn't sleep. I just kept replaying her words in my head. Over and over. At some point around 2 a.m., I remembered the security cameras I'd installed last year. Not because of crime, because of raccoons. They'd been getting into the compost bin. I pulled up the footage. It took a few tries, but I found it. 3:12 p.m. Mrs. Delaney walked out her back door. She was dragging a garden hoe. The blade scraped the pavement as she walked. She crossed into my yard like she'd done it 1,000 times. She stood in front of the roses for a full minute. Then she lifted the hoe and swung. Again. And again. She didn't hesitate. Didn't flinch. After 5 or 6 hits, she dropped the hoe and got on her knees. She ripped the roots out with her hands. She didn't even use gloves. She stuffed them into a black garbage bag, stood up, and stomped the soil flat. Then she looked right at the camera. Dead in the lens. And smiled. I watched the video 3 times. That smile didn't look like dementia. It didn't look confused. It looked satisfied. And I knew right then, this wasn't about flowers. This was about control. About her claiming something that never belonged to her. This was war. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I sat on my porch with a mug of black coffee, staring at the empty patch of dirt. I could still see one broken stem sticking out, leaning to the side like it was too tired to keep fighting. Mrs. Delaney came out around 9 a.m., wearing her usual beige sweater. She watered the lilies along her side of the fence like nothing happened. Didn't even glance my way. My hands were shaking. I didn't want a fight. I didn't want drama. But she had crossed a line I couldn't ignore. I burned the video to a USB stick. Then I went to the police. The guy at the desk, Officer Harlan, watched the video twice. He rubbed the back of his neck, gave a long sigh, and said, "Technically, it's trespassing and property damage. But unless you want to press charges, there's not much we'll do." I asked him what pressing charges would look like. He looked uncomfortable. "She's 79. It'd go to court, and likely be dismissed. Judges don't like putting elderly women on the stand over garden disputes." So that was it. The law wasn't going to help. That night, I didn't eat. I stared at the fence between our yards and thought about how many times she'd crossed it without asking. The next day, I started digging up the garden. Not to destroy it, just to make it mine again. I tore out every lily she'd planted. I dumped them in a wheelbarrow and rolled them to her porch. I didn't say a word. Just left them there. She came out 10 minutes later, holding one of the lilies like it was a dead pet. "You're being cruel," she said. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "So were you." She opened her mouth to speak, but I shut the door before she could get a word out. For the next few days, I kept to myself. I replanted the soil, but I didn't replace the roses. Not yet. I needed to think. Then, the strange stuff started. First, my garden hose went missing. Then 2 bags of fertilizer were sliced open and left in the driveway. I found shards of broken glass buried in my compost pile. It was her. I knew it. No one else had reason. But the cameras didn't catch it. She was careful this time. Too careful. She wanted me to know it was her. But not enough for anyone else to prove it. That night, I sat down with a pen and a notebook. I wasn't going to let her outplay me. She wanted to rot my peace from the inside. But I was done being polite. I started a list in that notebook. Every weird thing, every petty sabotage. I dated them. Described them. Took photos when I could. May 4th, hose missing May 6th, fertilizer bags cut open May 7th, glass in compost May 9th, wind chime smashed, found on the ground, cord sliced. By May 12th, I had a full page. Still no proof. She never touched the cameras. She stayed just out of range, like she knew the blind spots. But I wasn't just sitting around. I bought 2 more cameras. hidden ones. Tucked one into the birdhouse facing the compost. Another behind the shed aimed at the back fence. I didn't tell anyone. Not even my sister, who I usually vent to about everything. Then I went quiet. I let the yard go. I stopped weeding. Let the crabgrass stretch out. No watering. No flowers. I made it look like she won. And she took the bait. 3 nights later, I caught her on the new camera behind the shed. She crawled under the fence. Like a kid sneaking out after curfew. She carried something, a mason jar. She opened it, shook it over my garden beds, and slipped back through the hole like it was routine. I watched the footage 5 times before I figured out what she was doing. It wasn't just sabotage. It was poison. Slugs. Hundreds of them. Swarming in the dirt by morning. I looked up what kills plants fast and quiet. Some people use beer traps. Others use salt. She chose infestation. I scraped up the slime trails and dumped them into a bag. Added that to the evidence folder. I sent the new footage to the police. Same officer. Same shrug. She's technically trespassing, he said, but you didn't tell her not to enter your property recently. We'd need a clear warning on record. That's when I realized the game had rules. But they weren't mine. So I made new ones. I put up signs. Private property, no trespassing. Bright red. One on the gate. One on the shed. One facing her kitchen window. I sent her a certified letter. My lawyer friend helped me draft it. Clear language, do not enter my yard. Do not touch my belongings. Any further action will be considered harassment. She signed for it. I watched her through the peephole as she read it on her porch, mouth twisted in disgust. She didn't cross the line again. Not physically. But it got worse in other ways. She started calling the HOA. Complained my grass was too long. Said I had junk piles. Claimed I had rodents. The board sent me a warning. I had to go to a meeting. She sat there, 2 seats down, acting like she didn't know me. She's a threat to the look of our community, Mrs. Delaney said, voice steady. I don't feel safe living next to someone who won't respect the rules. I stood up and told them about the poison. The vandalism. The roses. They told me it was a personal dispute and not their business. I left that meeting shaking. But something else happened there, something she didn't notice. An older man, late 50s maybe, came up to me outside. Said his name was Greg. He lived 2 streets over. She did this to my wife, he said. I stared at him. Same exact thing. But it was tomatoes. My wife loved them. Tended them like children. One day, gone. Ripped up. Next thing you know, the HOA's all over us, then our water lines mysteriously cut. We moved after that. I asked if he had proof. He just looked tired. No. But I wish I'd fought back like you are. And just like that, I realized, I wasn't the first. And maybe I wasn't the only one still dealing with her. After my talk with Greg, I started asking quiet questions around the neighborhood. I found 3 more people who had run-ins with Mrs. Delaney. One guy, Mike, said his daughter's swing set mysteriously collapsed. The bolts had been loosened. No injuries, thank God, but he moved out within the year. Another woman, Rachel, said Mrs. Delaney cut down her bird feeder and told the HOA it was attracting rats. Pattern after pattern. Always some form of destruction. Then shame. Then pressure. Then silence. Most folks had left or given up. They didn't want the fight. They didn't want to go up against a sweet-looking old lady with a cold, careful way of playing victim. But I wasn't leaving. And I wasn't letting her keep winning. That's when I remembered something from weeks back. when she dropped the uprooted roses into a black garbage bag. I never saw that bag again. I searched my own trash. Nothing. I figured she had her own bin. But what if she didn't just toss them? I waited until Sunday night. Trash pickup was Monday morning. Around midnight, I put on gloves, grabbed a flashlight, and walked over the property line. She never had motion lights installed. I popped open the side yard bin. And there they were. The garbage bag was at the bottom, under layers of kitchen scraps and old newspapers. Inside, I found my mother's roses. Or what was left of them. Dried out. Twisted. But still lavender. And also, a pair of dirty gardening gloves. I took the whole bag home and documented every bit. I froze the gloves in a Ziploc. I didn't know what I'd do with them yet, but something about it felt final. 3 days later, I called her son. She never talked about him, but I remembered his name from a card I saw years back on her mantel. It took some digging, but I found his number in Salem. I told him everything. Calmly. Fact by fact. I didn't whine or beg. I just said I thought he should know what his mother had been doing. There was silence for a long time. Then he said, "She did this in Massachusetts. That's why we moved her out here. I thought she was better. I didn't ask for anything. I just gave him my address and told him I'd be forwarding the footage and records." He showed up 2 days later. He was quiet. Tired looking. Probably mid-40s. Wore a navy sweater and kept his hands in his pockets. He apologized. Not with excuses. Just deep shame. She won't admit it. She never does. But I believe you. He asked to speak with her privately. I let him. They argued. Loud. Slamming doors. At one point I heard him yell, "You need help. Real help." She screamed something I couldn't make out. When he left, she didn't come out for 3 days. On the 4th day, a for sale sign went up in her yard. She moved out 2 weeks later. Early in the morning. No goodbyes. No note. But I saw her one last time, from my window. She looked up toward the garden. Not at me. Not at the cameras. Just at the patch where her destruction started. Then she turned and got in the car. I never saw her again. After she left, I replanted the roses. Same spot. Same crescent. Same soil. I planted 3 extra this time. 1 for my mother. 1 for me. And 1 for every person who never got the chance to fight back. They're blooming now. Bright. Strong. Lavender as the sky before rain. And this time, no one's touching them. Not ever again.